Well into the mid-2000s and beyond, Cisco routers typically had a port labeled aux next to their console port. The console port is for connecting directly to a computer to administer the device via CLI over a serial connection. But what is the aux for? I've always wondered. The documentation is always quick to point out it cannot be used as another console port, at least not without some special cables. Well, it turns out one use is for remote out-of-band management via dial-up modems. You can hook up a modem to the aux port and configure it to accept incoming calls to remotely manage your router over a telephone line. In this video, you'll watch me absolutely stumble trying to get this set up, use an ATA to simulate a telecom analog phone line.
Linksys configuration menu. Please enter option followed by the pound key.
And we'll take a look at a bunch of modems. My dream is to dial up from my workbench over to a rack full of older gear and administer things over a phone line. Let's get into it. Let me set the stage for you here because this is going to require a variety of different equipment. We are going to attempt to configure this Cisco 2500 series router, a 2501 to be exact. It's got the aux port on the back, which we're going to use for remote management via dial-up, as in with modems and phone lines. I want to start with this 2500 series router because I actually have another one, a 2509, in a rack I'm calling the retro rack, and I actually use that to remotely manage a bunch of the gear in there. That 2509 in the rack actually has a special async port that accepts one of these squid cables, which actually break out into 8 RJ45 connectors for administering 8 different devices over the serial console. And when I'm talking about console administration, I mean this console port, which accepts an RJ45 connector, and you use one of these RJ45 to DB9 serial cords to connect it up to a machine locally. When I'm doing this here in the room, I've got a USB port going to my main machine. It's connected with a USB to serial adapter. Plug that in to the end of my cable, and we'll plug this guy in and turn him on. I'll give you a refresher. This is over the serial console port here. Then over on the computer, I've plugged that USB to serial adapter in. You can use something like putty. I like to use putty because it reminds me of being a kid, being young. I used to use it all the time. I can connect to that serial adapter at 9600 baud. I know that's what that router wants. Open up a terminal. And in here, I'm interacting with the router. I can go into privilege mode, and I can see the help commands, all the things I can do. This is what I mean when I'm talking about a local serial console connection. But I want to take it one step further. We're going to use this aux port that almost all Cisco routers have, certainly of this era, late 90s, early 2000s. And we're going to hook it up to a modem local to this machine here and actually be able to dial into this modem and see that terminal I was showing you earlier. This will be unhooked and we'll be completely administering this thing over a phone line. But how do we get a phone line? With one of these. This is a ATA, analog telephone adapter. It's got 2 analog phone ports and a couple Ethernet ports. Well, let me hook this up and I'll show you what this thing's all about. This is the power adapter I've been using to power this thing, and I needed to extend it, and whoever sold me this on eBay, I don't even know if it came with this thing, had zip tied it, and look at that. The bare copper showing. That's nice. That's why you probably shouldn't zip tie this stuff. It just ate right into it. We're just gonna pretend we didn't see that though. As this video progresses, we're gonna see a lot more stuff showing up. So what is this ATA doing? Well, I've got power plugged in, of course. This is going to my home network for 2 reasons. 1, remote administration. It's got a GUI we're gonna look at. And 2, it won't produce dial tone unless it's on a network for some reason. There's probably a way to trick it, but this is the easiest. And then over here, we've got 2 phone ports. This thing is meant to blend old and new technologies. So you might plug in some existing phones you've got, and then this thing can actually transfer your voice calls over VoIP, voice over IP. I'm gonna use this in a non-standard way. I've configured it such that when you dial one line, it rings the other. For example, this phone is line 1, this phone is plugged into line 2. We have a dial tone. If I dial 425-271-5555, this phone rings. So for all intents and purposes, this is my telecom provider. We don't have to hook phones up to these. We can hook up a modem to each port, one of which will be near the device we want to remotely manage, and the other one on a computer we want to manage this thing with. I'm going to briefly show you the remote management GUI that this thing has and a little primer on how you'd set this up. But first, a fun trick. If we dial star 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 star, we get into an actual configuration menu for this thing, which is pretty cool.
Linksys configuration menu. Please enter option followed by the pound key.
Then we do 110 pound.
192.168.1.9.
And it tells you what the administration IP is sitting at. I wish I had a handset for speakerphone for that. Well, technically I do, but that's going to be a whole nother story. Here's that web interface being hosted by the ATA, and just like the lady on the phone told us, it's at 192.168.1.9. Kind of a cool little thing. You get into this voice section and you can configure the lines, and there's a ton of different settings. And I had set this up to do some dial-up internet access experiments in previous videos, and there's a lot of little things you need to mess with. A lot of the time people don't have good luck with it. I've had really good luck with this ATA. I've been able to establish connections. Hopefully we're going to be able to set this up with the router. So your luck may vary based on model, I'm not sure. The end of the day, the important part is this dial plan, this complicated thing, looking thing down here. And you can see there's that number I was dialing, 45271, and then all fives. That's sort of the key piece, but you do need to fiddle with a bunch of this stuff, basically to get it to stop trying to mess with the line, because analog modems aren't expecting this digital stuff in between. And so you really wanted to get it into its most basic settings. At the end of the day, I basically followed Cathode Ray Dude's article. He has an article on the website. I'll link to it down below. Follow that, and you should have good luck. Now what we want to do is get rid of the phones. We know that dialing a number will ring the other one, which means a modem can dial in and access another modem on the other side. So we'll get rid of these phones. On my Windows machine, I was just showing you, I've got this USB to modem adapter. This little guy is a modem. I'm going to plug that in over there. And here's where I'm starting to run into trouble. I've got a pair of these US Robotics Sportster 33.6 fax modems. These were donated for the cost of shipping by a viewer named Larry. So thank you very much. This one has always been broken, I think. I'll show you what it does. This one came with a little tag on it, a little sticky note from a prior owner that says, having disconnects with this modem. However, I've used this one a ton, and it's always worked just fine until it stopped working about 20 minutes ago. These are kind of interesting to look at, actually. They were built 10 years apart. I'll show you. The one on the left that used to work was built in 1995, so this is like an OG unit from US Robotics. And over here, this other one was built in 2006. All the documentation is nearly the same, some rearrangement of the UL labels and stuff. Take a look at the fronts. The older one has a simpler looking US Robotics label. This one's got this newer styling. Colors are a little different. Maybe this is just faded, but pretty much the same unit. At any rate, I'll show you what this guy over here is doing. They take 9-volt AC, we flip it on, a bunch of the lights turn on. That's not what you want to see. This means carrier detect, as in it thinks a phone line is plugged in and it thinks it can see it. This is terminal ready. It thinks a computer's plugged in. Obviously, none of that is plugged in. This one has always behaved this way. And yeah, something's wrong with this one. Here's the older one that was working. It behaves a lot better. It's got this AA lit up, which is correct. That stands for auto answer, meaning if someone dials to this modem over the phone line, it's going to pick up the call right away. It's been configured for that with its jumpers, so that makes sense. I think CS stands for like clear to send. I think that just means that the thing is ready. So it seems okay. Let's get a phone line plugged in. For some reason, AA turns off. Maybe that's normal. And now at this point, I realize I can't explain the fault any further without explaining the universe that I've created down here. Well, let's configure this router to accept calls from a modem over the aux port. Let me show you the physical configuration of that. We'll configure the software, and then I'll show you why this thing's misbehaving. On the back of these dial-up modems, there's usually this serial port that is in the DB25, I think, form factor. So you can get these adapters, and it's kind of funny. That's how few pins it actually needs to use to accomplish its task. Big old connector. So we'll plug this in here, and this is going to convert us over to RJ45. We'll pull out one of these rollover cables. They're usually flat like this. This just means it's straight through. The wires aren't crossing on either end like a normal Ethernet cable or anything like that. So we'll plug that in. I'm quickly realizing this is harder to explain than I thought it would be. So this is going to go into our aux port. Basically what we have here is a modem dedicated to this thing. The serial connection out of the modem is going into our aux port. And theoretically, from a remote location, given a telecom provider and a phone line, I should be able to dial into this modem and connect and control this. Let's fire this up, and it's very minimal configuration to just get this thing ready to accept calls like that. It's actually behaving so far. I haven't done anything on the router yet. We have the router plugged in. This is a terminal. Oh, there it goes. Now it's misbehaving. So TR stands for terminal ready. That just means that we've successfully connected to a computer, essentially. And you can see this RD and SD. Don't know if it comes up on video, but they're just blinking constantly. This means that it thinks data is going back and forth over the line when it certainly is not. So like if I pull this, we know I haven't dialed in. Nothing should be going on. Those should be dead. And this is the fault I'm experiencing. So let's configure the router and hopefully this will make a little more sense. I should probably point out that I will be doing this over the serial console I showed you earlier, just to get us ready here. That's the only way I have to connect to this thing. Here we are over the serial console to the router. Let's get into privilege mode, and I'm going to do show line. And what we can see is it's going to tell us information about the aux line. There's some speed information here. To get this to work, we're going to configure terminal, and then at least on this router, we're going to do a line aux 0, and we're going to do speed. I'm going to set it to 9600 just to start, and we're going to do modem in out. This tells it that a modem's going to talk to it. We're going to give it a flow control hardware. I think this is necessary, but it might be part of our blink and light problem. We'll do a little exploration, and we're done. And our good friend Putty is back. Remember that USB modem I was showing you? It's plugged into this computer, and we're going to connect to it at 9600 baud for consistency. Open up a terminal here. I am actually talking directly to that USB modem here, and I can do something called AT, and the modem has responded back and said, okay, I understand that, which is good. I will talk about this AT command set in more detail in a moment, but we can say AT dial tone. This is going to tell the thing to dial a number of my choice, which of course is the number I was dialing on the phones. That little modem, we don't have any speaker on it at the moment, but it's actually dialing out and trying to talk to the other modem. I can hear this making like a relay click sound. The auto answer kind of clicks around. This is sort of behaving now. Something really funny going on here. See that click and the lights blink? I think this thing's in bad shape. It's trying. It's trying. After a few moments over here, it gives up and says, yeah, the line was busy. And now I'm getting inconsistent behavior. This is sort of what I expect this thing to look like right when I plug it in to the machine. It's not doing that funny thing anymore. I guess I'll try another dial. Same result. Sort of a relay click sound. These all kind of blink. It's trying. It's probably a pretty simple fault inside. Let's get this thing unhooked, and we're going to try something a little different. This is kind of confusing if you haven't done this modem stuff like me. I find it a little overwhelming. I'm going to connect directly over serial to this modem from the computer I was just on, and we're going to issue it some commands and try to talk with it, kind of see what it's up to. See here, it's behaving. Everything seems fine. Now I'm at a serial terminal connected directly to that modem that I just plugged in to this computer. Clear as mud, I'm sure. I'm going to type AT, and it said okay. Notice I can't see what I typed. The modem hasn't been configured to echo back to me. Let me go look up how to deal with that. I'm going to type ATE1, ATE1. And now we can see my AT commands. AT stands for attention. The AT command set, or the Hayes command set, originated with the original Hayes 300 way back in the early 80s. And it basically became a de facto standard. All the modems from that point on, if they wanted to be serious, essentially support these commands. It's just a command set, and there's a bunch of them. It's very terse. It's a little overwhelming when you're first learning it. I wouldn't say I'm familiar, but I'm getting better at it. But yeah, this is how you interact with modems over the serial port. I just had an interesting idea. Let's tell this modem to dial the other line and see if we can get a phone to ring. So what I'm going to do is, over the serial port, I'm controlling this modem, and I can tell it to ring the line. tell it to dial a number basically. So let's get it on the phone network. I can never remember which one it's supposed to be. They label them on the bottom for some reason. I'm going to tell it to dial the number. I can hear it dialing. It's behaving now. Busy. Okay, it tried. Let's do it again. It worked that time. So yeah, we just successfully dialed this. Actually, I can hear myself talking over the speaker. We have a connection. That was kind of cool. I do not know what I'm doing, but we're going to figure it out. So remember I set flow control hardware on the router. Let's try the AT command to set flow control to hardware here. I could not even begin to explain flow control to you, but they need to match on both sides is my understanding. That's AT and K3. Like I said, very terse. We got an OK back. Now the modem is just configured this way. I haven't saved its settings. Let's go swap some cables around. The moment I plug the router back in, we're getting the blinking, and I just don't think that's good behavior. This thing should have the same flow control settings. They have a bunch of dip switches and stuff, so it feels like a misconfiguration of this thing, or the router maybe, because I am able to like tell it what to do and interact with it and tell it to make calls and stuff, so maybe I just have it misconfigured. Anyway, let's try a dial in and see where we get. I really don't think it's going to do much though with what's going on here. We're back talking to that USB modem. ATGT 425-271-5555. Yeah, I don't hear it. So usually you'd hear it pick up the call. It's just doing that click thing. I'm going to try another modem. Let me know what you think. I clearly am doing something wrong. Hot new plan. Got a Hayes modem of my own. This bad boy was sent in by a viewer named Corey, so thanks once again. I love the look of these older original Hayes modems. This is a 1200, meaning 1200 baud. It's slow. I actually have a slower one, but we'll start with this. It's all the same story though, even though these are just many, many years apart. So we've got the serial connection on the back. We'll get it connected to our phone line. Hayes like to make their own little fancy connectors. This one is 13.5 volts AC. Needed that extra 0.5 volts, I guess. Man, these things just look awesome. So we've got HS. I think it stands for high speed, meaning it's going to operate at the full 1200. AA is auto answer. That's what we want. TR is, of course, terminal ready, meaning it knows that this thing is plugged in. And we've got MR, I think modem ready, meaning it's good to go. So notice we don't have RD or SD blinking or anything. And it's plugged in just like the other one, and it seems to be happy. She's a lot slower than the other one, though, remember. So we're going to set the speed to 1200 baud on the aux port. I'm not sure if this is necessary, but I'm going to connect to my USB modem at 1200 baud as well. It's happy. And we're going to dial. I hear the modem doing stuff. It made a couple screech sounds. Everything lit up. We've got read and send going on here. And over here, look at this. FR, that's the router's name. Can't remember if I did that or whatever. Anyway, we're controlling the router over dial-up, with two modems, over a phone line, and it is slow. Seconds of delay. Wow, okay, so we're in enable mode. Yeah, we are controlling the router remotely via that 1200 baud modem. Let's see how slow. Yeah, this is what 1200 baud looks like. This is live. Printing out its help commands. Oh, it worked. Okay, I don't know why this other Hayes modem I thought was slower. It's obviously way faster. This one's 9600 baud instead of 1200. Well, let's get 9600 baud going, and then I'd like to incorporate this into like a permanent setup for talking to the retro rack. I'm getting pumped. This one takes 14 volts AC, not to be confused with 13.5. Look at that. It's blinking RD and SD. Same exact behavior as this one. So the good news is this probably isn't broken. What can I do about that? It's 2 hours later, and my will is weak. Stamina is low. But as you can see, we've got some good lights here. Carrier detect, terminal ready, read and send are not blinking away. I messed around with these for 2 hours straight, hooking them up over the serial port. I could get both of them to behave the same and almost work. I found that if I took flow control to software on this one, they would stop blinking. but I don't think that's how this is going to work. So kept that at hardware, went into these and looked through all the terse AT commands to force this one into hardware mode. I did the same thing on here. And what would happen is I would dial and I could see AA blink. I could see it try to pick up and it could just never quite do it. So I gave up, went and had dinner, came back. This had been powered down, so it lost all the configuration I did. So it's back to whatever settings it was already on. Turned it on 2 seconds ago, dialed, and it worked. Here we are, connected at 9600 baud through no action of my own. I don't know why it's working. Let's see, show line. It's still quite slow, even at 9600 baud. And there's like noise on the line, so you can see all this garbage. Like this computer, this terminal sent a bunch of garbage over the line for some reason without me typing. So it's not perfect, but I'm gonna take it. Let's do another show line. Ooh, it's slow. I guess if you were desperate though, if your network was down, but the phone line was up, you would take it. There's this interesting column about input output overruns. Another hint I had that I was having flow control issues is when those lights were blinking, this number just would increase continuously, meaning the router was trying to send data to the modem faster than the modem could deal with it, which is sort of interesting. And so I would just look at show line over and over again, and this would just keep increasing. You can see it's quite a high number. I haven't turned off the router or anything. Now I'm nervous, so let's disconnect, and I'll try to do a dial live with you. We just exit. Yeah, look at all that garbage. We're going to start fresh here. Everything's cool, I think. Issue a fresh dial into the modem. And let's watch the lights. See the automatic answer. This is the old behavior. Quick flashes after the automatic answer. Let's see if it holds on. There we go. I think it's going to accept the call because OH, on hook. Is that what that means? I believe on hook. It means the modem has picked up the call. I'm just going to leave this in live to show you how long it takes. It's doing some... The modems are negotiating. It's too bad. I think the speaker on that 9600 is broken. Otherwise, we would actually hear the line noise. Yeah. And here we are. It kind of sends garbage. It sends this connect 9600, trying 9600, and the router is interpreting those as commands, basically. But yeah, I'm back. I'm calling it a win. I'm calling it a win. It's still so cool. I mean, it seems weird because I'm down here in this room, but it truly is over dial-up. Like, this could be miles away. You know, if it works, it works. Let's get this out of the picture. He'll be back later, though, and get rid of this and try our luck with this. A complete in-box, shrink-wrapped US Robotics 56K Faxmodem V92. This was very generously donated by a viewer named Kyle about 6 months ago. I have been looking for an excuse to open this up, and if dialing up into a rack that's 15 feet away from me over a landline isn't a good excuse to use this, I don't know what is. Let's get the shrink wrap off this. I don't lose too much sleep about getting rid of shrink wrap on complete in-box items because it actually literally keeps shrinking and ruins the box. So I don't know what this box has been through, but part of the reason, at least a little bit part of the reason, that it's looking like this is the shrink wrap like kind of takes over and squeezes the box. So we'll get rid of this. This is very exciting. It's from the Windows XP era, so early 2000s. Does she look ready to dial up into the retro rack or what? Kind of thinking maybe it came from Canada. Let's get in here. Oh, a little tight. Box is a little compromised. Oh boy, I don't want to ruin the box though. All right, I'm gonna do this off camera. 1 second. Got it out of its casing here. This this cardboard is just falling apart. This is an asinine box. Power supply. Maybe I had a little water in here. Uh-oh. Here it is. Ooh. Maybe. No, that's just dust. I thought maybe it'd been used. Nope. Look at that bad boy. Hell yeah. Got the software. Won't need that. Got the modem itself. Seeing some similarities with the Sportster. This one, of course, is capable of 56K, theoretically, and this one's 33.6. I'm not really holding my breath about this working with that, given that I could never get a Sportster to talk to that, but we're going to try it. This has become one unit. Unfortunately, it would have been nice to look at that. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. Leave it on there. Let's see if I can get the adapter out. We'll just We'll just set this to the side. US Robotics just love 9 volts AC. Came with a phone cord too, sweet. This thing has a 2002 date code on the back, well over 20 years old. It's maiden voyage. That's good. Here's what all the lights on the front mean, and here are the dip switch settings I keep talking about. And I want this thing to auto answer because I'm dialing into it, and that is dip switch 5. It needs to be up, and down in there you can see the labeled dip switches. Let's switch 5 up, and I don't know if we turn it back on. Yeah, auto answer is illuminated now. That's good. I think these things should be just smart enough to understand what they're connected to. I'm not going to mess with it at all and just plug it in and see where we get. Of course, that's what we don't want to see. So we're going to have to mess with that. To do that, we will directly connect with it via the computer. Well, folks, I got close. These are the settings printed out from the V92 modem. The important one is H3, meaning hardware and software flow control are turned on. Okay. This is the router. Flow control is software. I don't know if this thing even supports hardware control. It worked on the other modem. I don't know. We're going to dial the V92 modem. I can hear it accepting the call. All sounds good. We see connect 9600 on the terminal. The lights all indicate that I am connected, but I can't interact with it. I can't actually type or do anything. So close. This video is getting a little long-winded with the failures. I don't know how you telephony folks deal with this. We're just going to stick with the devil we know. Let's take this over and put it on the rack and get the other terminal server hooked up to it. I actually have a phone line that goes all the way over into that other room. Let's do what we set out to accomplish. Check out the new setup, by the way. It's the Sears Business Systems Center Power Director. You hit aux 1, powers up the ATA. aux 2, the V92 modem. I'm going to use this in here instead of that USB modem just to, use stuff. That Hayes 9600 is over in the retro rack, and the 2509 above it, all hooked up, theoretically ready for dial-in. And guess what? It doesn't work. I get no carrier, busy. I cannot get this thing to connect. I've tried the USR modems, I've tried the Hayes modems, I've configured the terminal server to auto-detect the modems, which it does successfully, and nothing. It's the next evening. I have spent hours and hours trying to get this thing to work with different modem configurations, actually setting different configurations on the modems themselves, messing around with the terminal settings, and the closest I got was successfully establishing a connection between the two modems. It says, the baud rate connect, and then I can't type, just like we were seeing when I was experimenting in here on the workbench. The same exact setup that worked with this 2501 right here in the workbench does not work with the longer phone cord and the 2509. I don't know if it's the longer line or the different router. In fact, I even pulled a big old 2911 out. You can see it in the back here. It's got an FXS card in the back, and it's actually capable of being an ATA and operating as a phone line exactly the same way that small ATA was, just at a higher quality. No difference. I even eventually gave up and referenced the very good documentation Cisco provides for exactly how to do this. I'll link these down below in the description. Followed those to a T. No luck. So I'm missing something. I'm glad that my modems probably aren't broken. I'm just not configuring something correctly, or there's something wrong with the line I've got set up. I've learned a ton though. Those AT commands used to feel very cryptic to me, and now I'm really comfortable actually interacting with a modem over the serial console. So it wasn't a complete bust. I don't have the setup I want where I can dial up from this room into the other, but we did get it working. We saw the terminal being served over the modems. We were able to remotely administer this 2501, remotely, over a phone line. So I'm going to call it progress. Despite the hours of troubleshooting and not a lot to show for it, I actually had a lot of fun doing this. And so I'm going to continue on the grind. I'm sure I'll get all sorts of great comments on things to try and configurations I should try to use. So I suspect I'll get it working the way I want eventually. This was a really confusing and hard topic to present via YouTube troubleshooting video format. So if you made it this far, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Helps the channel grow, and I'm also on Patreon. I post the usual behind the scenes type videos, what I'm working on, that sort of thing. I hope you had fun looking at all these modems and learning about the aux port, and I'll see you in the next video.